All right, so for those of you who are here live with us, good afternoon. For everybody who's going to watch this recording later, I'm glad you found it. I'm glad you're interested in the Environmental and Natural Resources CDE. So a little bit of background before we get started. Last year during the COVID year, it was very difficult doing a lot. Obviously, most of what we did was virtual, but we were very fortunate that we were allowed to take our state officer team on several industry and university visits. And one of the locations we went to last year was Nicholls State. FFA had a long tradition of working with Nicholls in years past, but we haven't been there in a while. And so we had some contacts there through Lori Richard, and we wanted to go give them a visit, tell them about FFA, and see how we could work with them in the future. Well, while we were there, we met Dr. Fontenot, who worked out on the Nicholls farm. He gave us a tour of the farm, and then we started discussing ways that we could bring FFA events back to Nicholls. And we said, you know what, we have this Environmental Natural Resources CDE that we've never done as a standalone event in Louisiana, and we think it would fit perfectly here at Nicholls. So Dr. Fontenot and his crew have graciously agreed to start hosting the ENR CDE. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Fontenot, what your background is, how's Nicholls getting involved, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I'm originally from Louisiana. I did my undergraduate, my master's at LSU in Baton Rouge, and then did my doctorate at Clemson up in South Carolina. And my first real job was back here at Nicholls State, right out of school. And so I've been here forever. I'm planning on retiring from here, just loving it. I'm the head of the biology department, and all of my degrees have the word fish in them. So at heart, I'm a fish biologist. That's what I like to do. Somehow we ended up inheriting, our department inherited the Nicholls farm. It's about a 277 acre facility, and unfortunately, like ag programs around the country that are decreasing in size and whatnot, when we went through the big budget crunch of 2008, our ag program was eliminated from the university, and then that's when the biology department took over the farm. It's a vast resources that those types of resources aren't available anymore. You just can't go and buy 277 acres of land anywhere. It's just cost prohibitive. And so I convinced our administration to keep it on. We use it for educational purposes. We train our students out there. We do research projects out there, and we grow a lot of different types of plants for native Louisiana plants for restoration work. We put in a few little ponds in there that we use them for broodstock ponds where we spawn fish, we raise them out. We have another faculty member who has these cover boards out, and he goes out every couple of weeks and does a herp survey out there to see what kind of herps we have out there on the farm. We've done small mammal surveys. We've done raptor surveys. We do the Christmas bird count out there every year. So we have a lot of activities going on at the farm. Currently working with Ducks Unlimited to build a 21 acre wetland out there. And that's going to be taken under pretty soon. We'll hope to have that in production for next year. And that is to pump water from Bayou Fos into the wetland, remove the nutrients, and then return the clean, nutrient-free water back into Bayou Fos. And this is all stemming from BP money to where we're trying to reduce the amount of nutrients going into the Gulf of Mexico to reduce the dead zone. So I know I recently judged some of the presentations we had over here on campus from the state competition and or maybe the regional competition, and they have a few talks on the dead zone and all. It was all relevant to me. So my goal is to keep that farm at Nicholls, and to be able to keep the farm at Nicholls, we need to make it as useful as possible and to incorporate as many different types of groups at the farm as we can. And when I met these the people from FFA, I thought, wow, what a great group to have out here, because Nicholls, one, has a strong ag alumni, and we want to bring some type of agricultural program back to our university. That's something that we want to do. I'm not saying we're going to bring a new degree program or anything, but we want to incorporate the concept of agriculture on our campus as much as we can. And I think this is just a fantastic opportunity. Our administration is 100% behind it. And anything that we can do to bring students out to Nicholls, out to the farm, I'm 100% behind. So we saw this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to doing some of this work with you guys.
Yeah, and we greatly appreciate it. It's always awesome to have universities that can take events on like this, because you provide the experts for us. I mean, you're the ones who understand it. With what you just described, with what you do, and with what the farm's purpose is, that fits in perfectly with this career development event. I mean, that's the rules of the event. It's doing exactly what you just described. So we're very appreciative of it. Anyone else on the call, Dr. Fontenot, who's going to be working with you, if you want to introduce?
Yeah, we got John Dennis here with us, and he does all kind of great surveying work with GPS. He's a fantastic instructor, relatively new to Nicholls. John, you've been here for a couple of years now?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's still new, but really nice guy. And you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thank you, Kate, for having this. And yeah, what Dr. Fontenot said, the farm is a great resource for our students here. And I think it's great. It's a resource that we can get out to other students and other organizations to work with. Yeah, a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Thibodeau, born and raised here. Similar to Dr. Fontenot, I did my undergrad at LSU. Graduated, worked for an environmental firm from Baton Rouge for 2 years, and then decided I needed to do a little bit more. So I moved up to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I earned my master's and my doctorate, my PhD in environmental dynamics, where I was using GIS and geospatial technologies to try and understand coastal dynamics and coastal erosion issues. And spent 20 years working in the land surveying and the geospatial world in Arkansas. Taught for a while in Arkansas, and then there was an opportunity to return back to Thibodeau and work here in the Department of Applied Sciences, where I teach land surveying and drafting classes. And these surveying classes incorporate the use of GPS, which, if you're in any kind of discipline, agri or anything, GPS and GNSS is a fundamental tool that everybody's got to have some competency working with. And I think it's great to bring that as one of these components to what Dr. Fontenot and what y'all are trying to do, Kate, for the career development. So that's a little bit about my background, and yeah, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thanks. And then we have a third group that's going to be with us, the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program. They're located here on campus. They are funded through the EPA Clean Water Act. And so they do a lot of water quality analysis and whatnot. And so they're going to be hosting the water quality part of our event this spring. And it's going to be Andrew Barron and Silva Nuna. There's going to be a team that's working together on this. They could not be here today, but I just want to let you know, I want to point them out that it'll be myself and Dr. Elise Ferrara, my wife. We'll be doing the identification portion of the event. Dr. Dennis will be doing the GPS portion of the event, and then Andrew and Silva will be doing the water quality part of the event.
I'm really excited about this event. I mean, it's definitely taking a lot of modern technology in agriculture, putting it into an event for our students to engage with. And we're always trying to make sure that our programs are staying relevant and modern. So that's something very important. We also have Dr. Eric Smith with us on the call. Dr. Smith, for those of you in Nicholls who don't know, he oversees all of our career and leadership development programs. So he's with us here today to ask questions and make sure we're covering everything we need to cover as we go through the webinar. So Dr. Fontenot, I guess the best way to start is let me pull up our website and show people where to find the rules for this event, because you have to start with the rules if you want to learn what we're going to be doing with the ENR CDE. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see this? It should be the home page of the LAFFA website.
Yep, got it.
All right. So for teachers who are watching this, or for students or others who want to learn, just like any other event, go to our home page. Click on association. You're going to scroll down to career and leadership development events. And right here, you'll find environmental and natural resources. So we're going to open that one. This set of rules, this was just approved by our CDE board this summer. So these are the new rules that were approved at state convention that are in effect now for this particular event. So when you open them up, hopefully you'll be able to see this. I don't know if it'll show this screen or not. Probably gonna put it on the other screen. Hang on. Can y'all see the rules, or did it move somewhere else?
I went somewhere else.
Okay, hold on. Let me share that document. There we go. Now you should see it.
Yep.
Okay. So this looks like the national rules because we copied the national rules and altered it some to fit our purposes here in Louisiana. So when you go down through, you can read the purpose. It's about environmental and natural resource education. It's a big part of agriculture. Like all of our other events, I won't say all of, most of our events, this will have 4 members per team and all 4 scores will count. So there's no drop score. It will take place outdoors, or at least part of it will take place outdoors, correct?
Yeah, a good portion of it will be.
Yeah, a good portion, rain or shine, just like all of our other outdoor events, it's going to be done there. So make sure you're prepared for that. It's going to be very similar to land judging, kind of that same type of environment in the way that this is going to take place. There will be multiple practicums. If there's identification portions, you can't touch it. None of that. It'll be on tables in front of you. And then otherwise, it's going to follow our same protocol with group leaders and color groups and that sort of thing. If there's any written material, we're going to provide it on site, so you don't have to bring any exams, problems, any of that with you. It'll all be there on site. So the way that the competition is formatted, you will need equipment for this particular event. We're going to go over that here in a few minutes. Dr. Fontenot has compiled a list of resources that you're going to need. You're going to need some sort of GPS system. And I believe, Dr. Fontenot, we have some cell phone apps that will work for that purpose, correct?
Yeah, Dr. Dennis gave that to us. It's stuff that I believe he has his students use those too, right?
Yeah, and we'll go over those here shortly. There are some tools for the practicums. We have a list of those also. And then just like any other event, you're going to need a clipboard and pencils. We are going to use a Scantron for this particular event. I'll show you the Scantron here in just a few minutes. For the individual activities that are going to take place, there will be a written exam. We're going to start uploading those exam questions on our state website, but just like any other national event, you can currently find those exams on the National FFA website. If you go to National FFA and you find the ENR CDE on their page, you go to past exams, you're looking for the general knowledge exam. So we're going to be using the previous exams from 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Remember, there were no exams from 2020 because National FFA did not hold competitions that year, and the exam from 2021 has not yet been posted. So we're going to be, for this year, we're using 2015 through 2019. It will be 50 questions. It'll be randomized. We're going to put it into our test gen system, just like we do with all of our other written exams. So you can start studying the written exam questions from the general knowledge tests on the national site. There's also an identification component. It will be 30 minutes long, 25 items. We do have a list. So if you look on the national rules, there's a big list of items, correct, Dr. Fontenot? And some of those we don't have in state, correct?
Right. So I took, and there were some things on there that I left, or so there's some things that we don't find in Louisiana, right? And I left those on there. That's what I want to talk to you about. If it's okay to leave those on there, because my guess is if they see the list, they'll study the list. Because if they go to the nationals with that, they're gonna have to know some of those things that aren't in Louisiana, correct?
That is true.
So that's why I want to leave some of that, the animals and some of the fish and things on there that may not be native to Louisiana, but on there, things like a pronghorn sheep, or something like that, or a salmon or a trout, those types of things that they'll likely come across for the national exam.
Yeah, and we're going to have the list of these items. They're going to also be posted on our website. I'll share them here with you in just a second so you'll know exactly what you should be studying for. So these are going to take place every year. There's always going to be the written exam. There's always going to be the ID component. Then we have annual practicums. The rules say that 3 of the 5 can be selected each year. And so Dr. Fontenot and the event superintendents at Nicholls will select which ones will take place this year. So Dr. Fontenot, which of these are we doing this year?
The GPS location.
So it'll be this one.
And the water analysis.
So for this year, we're going to do 2. As we move on and we expand this event out, we probably will move to 3. But for this year, we're going to be doing written exam, ID, GPS, and water analysis, correct?
Yeah, that's the 3 that we had talked about before.
Okay. So I guess if we could, let's go a little more in depth into the water analysis and the GPS locations. Let me see, probably would be helpful if I expand this for you too. If you're not following along at home with your own copy, let me zoom in so you can see this better. Can you still see the rules?
Yeah, we're still on the first page.
Oh, let me try it again. There we go. It should be much bigger now.
Yep.
Okay, so let's look at water analysis. Dr. Fontenot, could you explain a little bit about this practicum and what exactly the students are going to be required to do?
Yeah, so our colleagues over there at the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program, they do a lot of water quality, and they use these easy to buy test kits. So we're not going to use like an electronic monitor or whatever. Some of it's going to be like titration uses and whatnot. And I've given you a list from them of where they buy and what they buy for those kits. And then we'll use those kits. We'll have water samples that we take, and we'll measure the stuff ahead of time. So we're going to know what the target values are. And then the students will be given a blind water sample, and they'll have to analyze it for all these different components that are there. And then they'll have to, report what they are, and then we judge them on how accurate they are in their analysis and interpretation.
And we'll show you here in just a second. And again, I'll upload this to our website also. Dr. Fontenot referenced a list of supplies that you'll need. You're probably going to want to purchase some of this to practice at school. I did talk to Dr. Smith this morning. Depending on the number of teams that participate, there is a possibility that the state FFA office will purchase these supplies for your use at the actual event. We were thinking that we probably want to have everybody use the same thing, so there's no variation with any of it. And just in case some schools possibly couldn't provide it on site, I'm not promising that yet. We're going to look at the budget and make sure that we can afford it. But you're definitely going to want to purchase this to practice at school. If you don't know how to use it before you show up to Nicholls on April 9th, you're probably not going to be able to figure it out on site.
But also, Kate, if they do purchase their stuff and they practice with it, could they bring that same test equipment up with them to use the thing that they're familiar with?
Yeah, no doubt.
To me, because to me, it's just anytime you use something new, there's that little bit of a learning curve. And then if you use something you're familiar with, that makes it a little bit easier.
Sure. So that's the water analysis component. And then the GPS component, John, I'm sure you want to discuss this a bit.
Let me unmute. Yeah, so from my understanding, there's 5 of these components of the GPS. I've printed off my own copy. To complete one or more of the following. So of those 5 bulleted points on there, is the competition, are y'all wanting the competition to go after all 5 of those, or how, when it says of the 5, which of those 5 things do we need to be doing?
The rules say that they can complete 1 or more. So
Okay.
I would say do as many as you're comfortable setting up on the farm. I mean, especially since we're only doing this and one other physical practicum, we can expand this to be fairly extensive.
Good deal. One other thing, and I spoke to Dr. Fontenot about this. So on that page 1 equipment list being the E-Trex receivers are going to be supplied. That's a difficult piece of equipment to get access to for however many students there are. There are quite a number of apps that you can download on a smartphone. And so what I provided to Dr. Fontenot was a list of 2. Now, this is where the challenge comes in with the GPS, is that I use an Android. I'm running on an Android. I taught a GPS class this past semester, and I had some students operating on an iPhone. I had half and half. There's a great app that I've been using where you can download your data and you can bring your data into Google Earth all for free. It's a free app, free services to where you can download and do what's listed on this thing here. The iPhone, I didn't realize it until one of the students had downloaded the app, but then you had to pay for the ability to actually download your data to bring it into Google Maps to where you can actually view it on a screen. So the 2 apps that I've looked at, the GPS coordinates, both for the iPhone and for an Android operating system, I think they should do fine. I keep trying to find somebody to let me borrow their iPhone for a weekend to go out and map with it, and I can't get anybody to do that. So the 5 options on there, I think we can do. There's more than an ample space on the farm to accomplish those things. I went out and set, I cleared this with Quentin, went out and set a couple of monuments in the ground to where can have some students accomplish these things by navigating with our app, identify some coordinates with these apps, which gives you your basic readout of what you get from an E-Trex. The E-Trex is great because you can download your data, drop it into a computer and look at it. This particular app for the Android allows you to do that, nearly mimics what you can do with an E-Trex, as well as email your data to yourself. I don't know if I've answered questions or if you've got other questions for me.
So for example, this first bullet where it says use GPS unit to identify coordinates at various locations utilizing various coordinate systems. Can you explain what is that actually going to look like? What is the student going to do with that smartphone for that particular component of the practicum?
So on that first one, that very first bullet point, use the GPS to identify coordinates of the various locations. The way I interpret that is there are multiple ways, multiple coordinate formats. You've got a latitude, longitude, you've got an X and a Y, you've got a northern and easting. And so that to me is more of when you open up the app gives you the option to, how do you want to view your data? Do you want to navigate by coordinates using latitude, longitude, or do you want to navigate by coordinates using a northern and easting? I'm interpreting that as being just, can the student read on the readout, if I were to go and set the settings in the app to latitude, longitude, and then I gave the app to the student, all right, what is your coordinate type? They could tell me that it is a latitude, longitude, it's a geographic coordinate system as opposed to a UTM coordinate system or a state plane coordinate system. So that's more of just the ability to recognize these numbers that I've given to you. It's either a geographic or a state plane coordinate or UTM coordinate. That's more of just evaluate the interface that you're working with.
Okay, let's do this. Let me pull up the Scantron sheet and show you exactly what they're going to be filling out. That might help answer that question too. So this is the Scantron. This is the GPS portion of the Scantron.
Yeah, so there's your latitude, longitude. So those two coordinate systems. So that goes to that first one. You know, can you identify coordinates of various locations, various coordinate systems? They should be able to read. If you look at the latitude, it's separated by that decimal point. Some students will think they're all latitude and longitude values. Your UTM coordinates are not going to have that decimal point because it's reading it to the whole value. So that is just a, giving students coordinate values. You could even do that on paper and say, is this a latitude value, and differentiate between latitude and longitude, differentiate between your northern and your easting on the coordinate value.
John, I was the way I was interpreting that, and man, you're the expert, so I'll say that, is that the students would go to a fixed spot and then they would record the location in both latitude, longitude, and then in the UTM measure.
Oh yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like we have a flagpole out there. They go there. Okay, what's the coordinates of this place using both systems?
So okay. So that would require them to continually change back and forth.
That's right.
It's like you and I would be having a conversation in French and English at the same time right now.
Yeah.
Going back and forth. Yeah. So they'll have to be changing their coordinate systems continually throughout the project, and that I don't know if that would create.
Well, I guess what I'm saying with this one exercise is we would just have 1 point for them to identify.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You see, so like for part one, we'd have a pin flag in the ground or something. Okay, what's the coordinate of that? They would write that, and that would be that first section of the exercise, and then they go to part number 2. Map a perimeter or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be done. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was reading it, I was reading that as handing them a sheet of paper. All right, look at these numbers.
Sure, yeah.
Are these latitude, longitude value coordinates?
And you know what? For the exam part, we can do that.
Okay, yeah.
This is for like the practical field exercise.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for the exam, we can give them a set of coordinates and ask them what are these coordinates formatted as.
Yeah. And Kay, to the second bullet point, use a GPS unit to identify boundaries of a given area. There's a couple of ponds out in the area that are within close proximity to where everybody, 277 acres is a lot of land. And I don't think we want students kind of all over the place. And so there are several ponds and several fields within close proximity, everything that I was thinking that's where they would go and identify, calculate the boundary, literally walk corner to corner to corner to corner. And here's where these apps gives you the ability to record your track. And then you can, either you can calculate the area. I don't know how in depth I want to have them doing stuff by pen and paper, but you can have the app when you walk those corners, it will calculate, you can identify the boundary and calculate the acreage. Now, as a surveyor, that's not going to be accurate, but it's giving you an approximation of the area, the perimeter of the area that you're walking.
So these GPS apps, though, it's going to give them the ability to do all of these different bullet points using that app.
Yeah. With the Android app that I've got on there, for sure. And it should be from the investigation, I guess, of reading up on what that iPhone app does. I think it's similar to it, you know, and I need to get an iPhone because I don't want I didn't want my students paying for the ability to download and see the data that they got.
Okay.
Yeah, the others, those other 3 bullet points, use the GPS to lay out location of a fence line. Again, that's nearly identical to the previous one. You know, they can go do that same thing as laying out the line, marking a location. You know, this particular app on the Android, you can record your position, you record your elevation, your XYZ position, and it gives you a reasonable precision to it, which you can then import into you know, a free software program like Google Earth to visually see where your location's at.
Do you know of any resources online, videos, other places where teachers could go to see exactly how this is done?
No, I'm not too familiar with any. You're talking about with using these particular apps that I sent to Dr. Fontenot?
Yeah, like if as a teacher, if I wanted to show my student an example, this is how you use a GPS to identify coordinates. This is how you use a GPS to identify boundaries.
Yeah. So I could send y'all some links that has that, you know, that shows how here's a quick link of how you can bring your data into Google Earth. But this is all being done out in the field. They're not going to be using Google Earth out in the field, will they?
I don't think so.
Okay. There is a Google Earth app that is fantabulous, and because I've used that one out in the field working. But yeah, I'll get some resources that does like a, you know, walkthrough of how to do these particular tasks on these bulleted points.
I guess thinking about this now, I've got a question both for Cade and John. Let's say they do the 4th bullet. They use a GPS unit to mark location of a path or road through a given area. How do we assess that they were good at that or not?
How do we assess what?
That they accomplished the task. How do we grade them on that task?
It's all going to be on the Scantron form. Let me pull it back up. All of the GPS information is going to go somewhere on here. So for those of you who are watching the webinar, what we need to do is investigate the Scantron more, and we'll be able to tell you exactly where each of these things will go. I'm assuming from what we're reading in the rules is that each of those bullet points probably goes on a different part of the Scantron, especially when you look at how it's numbered.
Okay.
So we definitely will need to do a follow-up to this webinar. I can do something really short to show teachers on the Scantron. This is where you're going to put answers for this particular problem. This is where you're going to put answers for
and
this.
I don't know if you can contact another group or whatever that's done this before, so give us some examples of how they incorporate the Scantron into the GPS stuff, because I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a follow-up to this. Okay. And then also on the Scantron, we talked about the written exam. That's going to go here in this block. So it's 50 questions. And the water quality will go here.
Gotcha.
There was another component, wasn't there? That might have been it. No, the ID. Identification will go here. And if you look in the rules, just like for all of our other CDEs that have identification components, they'll have numbers that will be tied to them. So you'll see that in the state rules.
Okay.
All right, so let me share these other documents that our Nicholls friends have created for us. So we were talking about GPS. Here are the links to the Apple Store and Google Play if you're going to download those. And here's where you can find a compass. Now, teachers, keep in mind, this is from what Dr. Smith and I were thinking, this is going to be the only event where we allow students to have a cell phone during the actual competition. That's a big no-no and everything else. So we will definitely come up with security protocols to make sure that cell phones will be used only when the GPS component is taking place, and otherwise they're going to have to be turned back in. So just keep that in mind. We never allow cell phones in any kind of event because obviously they're all smartphones and you can go find answers. So they're only going to be used during the GPS component of the competition. And then they came up with the equipment list. Again, I'm going to put this on our website so that you'll have access to it. Dr. Fontenot found 3 different suppliers. This is for the water quality component. These are the items you'll need. He even put item numbers for you for most of them. So when you're stocking your chapter to start practicing this, you'll have some options of where you can go to start purchasing that equipment. And then the last one, here's the identification. So again, these are the ones that could be in the competition. Again, make sure you go to the state rules to find those corresponding ID numbers. Just like if any other event, floriculture, nursery, vet science, anything that has an ID component, make sure they're learning the numbers also that go along with the potential identification. So this is very much environmental focused. There is equipment, but then we look at species of wildlife, birds. There's invasive species to learn, fish and aquatic. So very much, this is very similar to our vet science career development event, just focused on wildlife and natural resources. All right. Does anybody have questions? I know we have a few teachers on the call with us right now.
I did have one question.
Yes, sir.
Do the schools have their own E-Trex units?
I don't believe. Are they going to do that? Is that something they're going to be required to have?
Well, if the on the equipment list that was provided, it says the equipment that will be provided, the Garmin E-Trex receivers. I know some. I didn't know if any of the schools had the E-Trex, because that would eliminate the GPS apps. But I don't know which schools do have, the E-Trex.
I would assume that the vast majority of them do not.
Yeah.
And the more affordable option is going to be to use the cell phone app.
Yeah. Gotcha.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions? So this is definitely going to be a work in progress for this year. We're going to clarify some of these questions, especially regarding the scorecard. We'll provide some more resources of how to practice, especially with the GPS component. So we'll definitely put together a few more webinars as we go forward. If anyone has questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us here at the state office, and we'll be disseminating information from our Nicholls crew here. So Dr. Fontenot, Dr. Dennis, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, thanks.
Ready.